Okay, so I wanted to finish up just with a statement of what the theorem was for how to make a proper rational function into its partial fraction decomposition when you have distinct and irreducible quadratic factors. So this was an irreducible quadratic factor, and we saw that it had this form. So it's not going to be anything complicated. So all this part is saying is if our denominator is irreducible, which means, b squared minus 4ac is negative, then your partial fraction decomposition will have one term, will have a term of the form, exactly what I wrote there. Take your irreducible, put it in the denominator, and in the numerator, we put an unknown sort of linear term. Okay, so for example, if we had something much larger than this, here's an irreducible quadratic, x squared plus 1. So it gets one thing that looks like this, x squared plus 1, unknown constant times an x plus unknown constant. Okay, here's an x squared plus a 4. Notice that that's exactly what we had here, and it got a form that looked like that. So nothing's changed. It gets an unknown constant times an x plus another unknown constant in the numerator. Okay. It's not ax plus b because we already used a and b in this example, so I had to move on to c and d. And then to review, what do we do when we have linear factors that are distinct? We take that factor and we put it in the denominator and give it an unknown constant. Take that factor, put it in the denominator, and give it an unknown constant. Okay, so with that, you should be able to do all of the problems except for those that don't have distinct irreducible quadratic factors. That's the last step to add to be able to handle everything. You will be able to integrate any rational function as long as you are able to factor it. Admittedly, that can be pretty challenging. I mean, I would hate to see what this thing looks like multiplied out and have to come up with this factorization. I think the only way to approach that would be to do things like this. How did I notice that minus 1 was x minus 1 was going to be a factor of this? Well, it would be, for instance, by plugging that in. Noticing that if I plug in a 1, I get a 0. So for instance, in this one, if I multiplied it out and I noticed that I plug in minus 1 got me a 0, then that will get me started on my factorization.